All right, so we're gonna sit against the wall with our back on our bum. That's how we're gonna start this practice. And it's up to you if you want something under your seat, but you're just simply gonna use the wall as your support system. And I like to get fairly close with my sacrum. And then I'm gonna try to also get my shoulder blades or my rib cage back against the wall. But don't worry about having your head against the wall unless that feels super comfy and natural for you. For me, it does not. So I'm just gonna pull my head away from the wall. And then you can drop your eyes closed if you want to, or if you like your eyes open, maybe you just pick a spot somewhere in your room that you can focus on a small object, something that's not gonna move. And just hold your attention there. Notice how your breathing is right now in terms of its depth and maybe any sounds you're hearing, the speed of your breath. Noticing if the exhale and the inhale seem to be about the same length, which is not necessarily a priority. I kind of like to have my exhales a little bit longer, so you can work into that idea if you want to. Explore it. As they're rising and falling around the shoulders or the chest. If there is, don't sweat it, but try to move your inhales a little bit more into the wall if possible. Consciously press your rib cage back into that support system. Keep your breath at a pace and a depth that feels soothing for you and natural. This does not have to be an overworked breath. We'll start to pull our toes back towards our shin bones. That's going to make your heels press forward. And now try to pull your heels towards you as you stretch your toes towards the front of your mat. Simple ankle movement here. Let's keep going. Pull back. And then point forward. Last couple like that. And then you're going to take your legs just a little bit wider than your hips, maybe even as wide as your yoga mat. Neutralize your legs so that your toes are pointing straight up first. And then you're going to allow your thigh bones to roll outward as your toes roll outward. And your knees can bend a little bit, that's fine. And then let your thighs spiral inward as if you were trying to take the tops of your thighs to face each other and pull your outer thighs forward and upward. Simple rotation of the thighs a few more times as you just let your trunk be supported by the wall. And then just find a neutral position for your legs. Let your pelvis be pretty heavy. Reach back just so that you can kind of get a sense for if there's a big gap between your low back and the wall, or if your low back is pressing into the wall. Whatever you have there in terms of your natural spine curves, just try to hold on to those in this next bit. So you're not going to try to force yourself into pressing back or pulling away. You're just trying to keep the same energy that you have right now. but then I'm going to challenge the shoulders a little bit. So we'll take the arms open like the cactus or a goalpost position. And then if possible, press your whole arm back into that wall. Now, as you do that, you might sense that there's quite a significant stretch on the anterior shoulder, maybe even into your chest. So if you need to pull your arms away from the wall at all, it's totally fine. And then we're going to create a snow angel type movement. So the arms are going to stay bent, but we're going to try to bring our fingers closer to each other overhead, letting the arms glide on the wall. Now my elbows came away from the wall, and I'm going to allow that because otherwise I would have to force something, and I don't think that's wise. And then glide your arms down so that your elbows drop below the shoulders, like you're trying to tuck them behind you. Find a little flow here. Notice how if you inhale with the arms overhead, that feels different than if you inhale with your arms coming down beside you. What's happening in the ribs when you inhale? And then notice those same things as you exhale. So you have some time for discovery here. You might be hearing my hands sliding on the wall. I'm having a hard time holding on to those same points of contact against the wall. I'm just aware of it, no judgment. Let's do 2 more. One more time. Well, then just rest your arms. Let them lay in your lap or down beside you. Drop back into breathing sensation. A little bit more patience with your exhale. Slow things down. And then our next stop, we're probably going to want something to pad our knee, which is why I have this blanket here. So you'll want to have a blanket or a towel or something pretty soft. We're going to move into a quad stretch. So the idea here is to stay kind of backed up against the wall, but come into tabletop. And then you're going to send your left leg, your left lower leg, up the wall and try to put your left knee fairly close to the wall. If you have your books or your yoga blocks handy, you might want those too. So as you get your left shin next to the wall, maybe even all the way against the wall, top of the foot on the wall, you're going to work the right leg into a lunge. And if you have to come away from the wall a little bit with your seat to do that, that's great. Now your hands can just stay down on the floor and you can lean your trunk on your right leg. The more you try to get your trunk upright and maintain that pelvis position, which would be close to neutral, the bigger stretch you're going to get on the front of that left leg. So what I would recommend, since we're going to be here for a little bit, is to put that support underneath your left knee if you need to. Stay folded over your right leg for a little while. And just focus on your breathing and your body sensations. I'm going to have to readjust myself to get my blanket underneath my knee. I got so excited about this, I forgot to put it under there. And if it feels too intense, just pull away from the wall and don't be so close to it. Once you feel like you're in that Goldilocks spot, one that's not too hot and not too cold, it's kind of in the middle ground, you're going to try to find a pause and some stillness. Once again, maybe setting your gaze or closing down the eyes. Fine-tuning your awareness to sensations on that left front hip, left quadriceps area, maybe even around the knee or the ankle. The tendency for that middle pelvis area is to kind of reach the tailbone back towards the wall. Let's try to counter that here by slightly tucking under from there, almost like you were trying to shorten the distance here between the low ribs and the front rim of your pelvis. You want a little more? You're going to walk your hands back a little more, push your bum closer to the left heel, and maybe you would come up. But if that feels like it's just too much, then ease out and find your edge. There's really no benefit to overdoing these stretches. If we pull too hard or push too hard, that usually sets us back. So think of doing a little bit less than a little bit more in this particular class. We've got less than a minute here. So if any adjustments need to be made to increase the sensation or to ramp it down, do that now. Couple more breaths. And then it's somewhat awkward to get out of this. So just kind of try to drag your left knee away from the wall. You're going to step into a forward fold. I'm not going to demonstrate this because I don't want to just show you my backside, but I would recommend that you all turn towards the wall and fold in a way that the wall is pressing against the back side of your ribs or the back side of your shoulders. And if you'd rather not turn your tush towards your camera, you can just put your bum against the wall and fold over your legs. Let your shoulders shrug. If you wanted to get your feet even closer to the wall, your hands could come back on your blocks, and you could use them to kind of counterbalance your way into more of a halfway fold. So many choices. Two more breaths here in this little recess between sides. And then we'll come back to that wall stretch of the quads this time, snuggling that right knee close to the wall. Left leg's going to be forward. Top of the right foot against the wall. And you might notice right away that there's a difference between the right side and the left side. So let's ease in slow. Find your very first edge. And practice just kind of being content with that position for a while before you decide to ramp it up, if you decide to ramp it up. The closer you get your knee to the wall, the closer you get your seat to your heel, and the more upright your spine gets, all of those three things are going to intensify that tensional stretch on your right leg. The hip and also those long quad muscles. Notice if your tailbone's getting away from you, reaching to the wall. Think of countering that with just a mild tuck under of your bum, as if you were trying to reach your tailbone straight down to the floor rather than reaching it back. Try to find some semblance of stillness in the pose. But if that creates any sort of distress on your end, it's okay to create some sort of self-soothing movement, whatever that is. Sometimes I like to sway a little bit if I'm feeling antsy. So I always allow for that. There's more than one right way to do these things. Is there any unnecessary holding or gripping around your jaw or your cheekbones or your eyes or your forehead? See if you can let some of that go with every exhale breath. Okay. You're going to work your way out. Take it easy, take it slow. Pull that right knee back in. And then we're coming back to our seat. It's up to you if you want that blanket under your bottom. You could sit on it to give your hips a little support, but you don't necessarily need it. And then I'll let you decide how you want your legs here. So you could just take them forward. You could take them forward and a little wider. Or you could sit with your legs more in a straddle or even in cross leg. So basically we're just kind of finding that resetting, neutral position of spine, pelvis, shoulders. Not fussing too much about the posture, just noticing it. Can we breathe into the back side? Breathe into the wall. Okay. So our next stop, and this is going to get a little strange because I'm going to have to turn away from y'all. So it's okay because you don't need to see my face. You just have to see what I'm doing. Let's get rid of this guy. Put him over here on his blankie. Okay, for this next bit, you may wish to have your strap and some blocks. Maybe one, maybe two. You'll have to kind of sort that out once you get into the position. You'll want those blocks fairly close to the wall, but not right next to them, and place them on the right side of your mat somewhere, maybe about a foot away. And then we're going to find an archer position. This is what I've heard called archer. The best way to get into this that I found is to scoot your left hip really close to the wall. Come down to your forearms. And then you're going to try to get your bum uber close to the wall. Your left leg is going to be in the butterfly. And then you're going to hook the strap around your right leg somehow here. And then your right leg is going to move away from your midline. You have the strap here to assist and kind of leverage so that you have support in your hip. What I usually wind up doing is constructing some sort of a pedestal for my right leg to lay on over here to the side. So you can also work through that. These blocks aren't super stable, so that might not work for me today. I might have to have a little assist from the strap and a little assist from the block. Now, if you don't like this left leg in butterfly, it can just go straight up, right? The legs can be kind of asymmetrical here. I'm going to set my timer. I'm going to be here for about 3 minutes. It's okay to allow for complete softening in the shoulders and in the neck and in the back. And then it's also okay to keep yourself just a little bit aware of hip muscular engagement, however low level it might be, just as a way to remind that area of your body that you're strong, you are supported. Do your best to find that stillness. Find your gazing point or shut down the eyes. I'm going to move my right heel all the way to the wall, get rid of the strap, and then set my leg on that yoga block. So if you're in a position where you can reorganize now, we're about halfway through or so. If you still have access to your strap, use that to guide yourself out so that you don't have to rely just on the hip muscles to sweep your leg back up. Untether your foot, and then we're going to take the feet just a little wider than the hips, potentially a lot wider than the hips, that's up to you. And then your knees are going to be open about halfway. Come onto the outside edges of both feet, so your thighs are rotating outwards. And then turn on towards the inner part of your foot as your knees come together. Open your legs, come onto the outer edge. And then let those thighs sweep together and inwardly rotate. 3 more, real slow. Be aware of where you're feeling things in your hip as you rotate them. And then we'll repeat. We're going to have to move our props. The right leg can be in your butterfly. Hook up the strap to the left foot. And let's start with that left leg just, a little bit away from the wall. Try to find your first edge in terms of that inner thigh stretch as you open your hip to the side. And we're working to try to get our arms in a position where they're not having to work too hard. And then go ahead and try to make that connection, left heel landing against the wall. Maybe some sort of support system under your left leg so that we don't have kind of that hanging sensation in the hip. So we do want to feel supported here, not necessarily at our end range in terms of flexibility. Find your gazing point or go inside. Observe breathing. Notice if you can hear a sound with your voice. Where do you sense that expansion? All of the things that we normally watch for and feel for while staying removed from making any conclusions about any of that. Just from a place of curiosity. And sure, we can make changes if we want to. We are in charge. Utilize your strap. Guide your leg back in. Take your slow. Unloop it. Let's come back to that bent knee position. Heels can be on the wall, but the toes don't have to be. And then we'll go back to that butterfly action. Outside edge of the foot, thighs roll outward. And then trying to spiral the thigh bones towards each other. On this one, I have my knees a little more open, so you could try that too, getting your heels to rise a little higher on the wall. Now stretch your legs up vertical for a little while. Hopefully you can feel your tush against the wall. If you don't feel it, wiggle yourself a little closer. And here, if you feel like you're having a hard time keeping your legs straight or vertical, you could lasso your legs and tighten up that closure so that the strap assists you in that position. But for this particular round of legs up, we're not going to be here very long. With this style of practice, this is more of a yin-like practice. I generally do very little talking. I probably should have warned you about that first, but don't be alarmed if you don't hear from me for 2 minutes, 3 minutes. That's not unusual. Free your legs from the strap if you lassoed them. And then you're going to wiggle away from the wall a little ways, just like a little inchworm. You can stay fairly close to it. Don't go too far. Maybe, I don't know, 6 to 8 inches. You can play with this. We're going to plant our feet so that they're about as wide as our hips. And we're going to use this wall as an assist to peel our spine off the ground segmentally. I think I'm still a little too close. I'm going to go back a little further. So it's like bridge pose, only we're using the wall to push against and then pulling the hips off the floor one vertebra at a time, trying to let the spine lift, and then maybe keeping the ribs down. You could peel off the first few layers of the ribs, but we're going to try to keep the weight out of our neck for the most part. If you feel a little congested in your neck here, what you could do is put your blanket underneath your shoulders and then let your head lay on your mat. But you should feel a sense of power from the glutes here. Two more breaths in the bridge. Try to keep your front ribs fairly heavy, soft into the body. Lower down as slowly as you can, segmentally, placing your vertebra on the floor one at a time. Step your feet out a little wider. And then let's come to those windshield wipers, but this time we're going to let the legs go in opposite directions. They're both going. Sorry, same direction. They're both going right, both going left. You can let your pelvis move a little bit too. Might really be able to feel your pelvis tipping and lifting in this position. Next up, we're headed into a figure 4 stretch. So you will need to stay a decent distance away from the wall so that you can cross your right ankle atop your left thigh. Left heel will probably be about in line with the back of the left knee, more or less. Work on guiding your right leg open, pulling the outside edge of your knee on that right leg towards the wall. And then take a peek at your ankle. The ankle likes to turn here. So let's see if we can push out of that, almost like we're trying to keep a really straight ankle, like a cast. Feeling for our natural spinal curves. And then decide how you want your arms. Since we're going to do this on the other side too, you might kind of mix it up. Out to a T, cactus, over your head, by your side. If you're feeling some fatigue on the outside of your right hip from holding this position, I am. I'm just going to use my right hand and just gently give that right leg some assistance. We'll take 2 more breaths like this. Now let your right leg cross all the way over your left. Lift your left foot away from the wall and try to make your legs kind of look like a pair of shoelaces. Left thigh tucking behind the right thigh really tight. And then you can either just hold this like this with your hip muscles, or you can take a hold of opposite shin or ankle and just think of kind of tightening those shoelaces, but in a really compassionate and kind way. There's no forcing here. Gently guide your thighs towards your ribs or towards your belly, towards your trunk, finding just some easy compression there through the front of the hip. And maybe a little stretch on the outer hip. And then free that up. Take your heels against that wall. You're going to stay this far away still and just come back to the wipers. And then set up your second side for figure 4. The first part of this is a little bit of active rotation. Ankle finds its place. And then we're consciously trying to pull that left leg wide into rotation. You can use the right leg to just kind of push against the wall. Set your arms up. Check in with the ankle, making sure we don't have all those little wrinkles on the inner border of the ankle. Shoulders easy. And a really soft and subtle breath. Left hand can go in for that assist, just providing some soft support. And there's no need to overdo this. So if you feel that your pelvis is moving along with the hip, then maybe don't go so far. Let your pelvis try to find its balance in level. And then we're going to find the shoelace. Left thigh tightening up on top, right thigh snuggling in behind. Take the legs away from the wall, and then maybe you want to hold opposites and snuggle closer, thighs towards the trunk. And give your legs a stretch. Take heels to the wall, a little bit wider. And you could either go back to the wipers or you could do the butterfly in and outs. How much you want your knees bent or open is completely your choice. You might try it more than one way. And then we're gonna wiggle closer again. So maybe not all the way to the wall with the bum, but fairly close. You're gonna find what feels like a squat here, or almost like happy baby, but with your feet in the wall. For me, it's more comfortable to kind of hold the front of my shins or knees, but your arms can just dangle by your side as well. And then you'll have to play around with how close you have your heels to the backs of your thighs. Closing the back of your knee more, or walking the feet up the wall a little bit and opening your knee a little bit more. Either way, let's try to find pretty neutral curves in the back. So if you feel like you're really tucked under, you might be too close to the wall. And if you feel like you're in a little back bend, you might be too far away from the wall. And now you have your yoga blocks. So if your legs feel like they need some backup, you can wedge your yoga blocks somewhere outside the thighs. Oh, that's nice. Let your eyes drop closed. And then we're going to come back to stretching the legs, walking the legs up a little bit, and inching all the way up next to the wall again. Most awkward movement ever. Okay, so now both legs are going to straddle in the straight leg position. And if you decide you want those blocks underneath, you'll have to kind of figure out how close they need to be to you in order to provide that support. Heels against the wall. Backs of the legs may not touch, but hopefully the bum's touching. Find your Goldilocks spot and relax into conscious stillness. And remember, you have a choice. If you don't want to be still, make those changes. Okay, so here's going to be a little bit of work for us tonight. We're going to take our time to start to walk or slide our legs back together. So you have the support of your arms if you need them. We're going to try to be patient with this and try to float our legs off of whatever support we have underneath them. Just a little bit and breathe for 5, 4, 3. You might sense some shaking already. 2, 1. Heels a little closer together, just a few inches, and breathe. A little bit more. And again, bring your heels in slightly. Pause. And a wee bit closer. Again. Notice how the effort changes as our legs get closer and closer to meeting. Come in a little bit more, just an inch or so. A little bit more. And again, just a few inches. Now, before we come closer in, let's try to find that position, that width that was challenging, like maybe the most challenging for you. For me, it was just off the block. We're going to go back there. And take 5 really slow, long breaths if possible. Supporting yourself through your inner thighs, as if you were about to squeeze your leg together, but you're holding. Breathing into the back, breathing into the sides. Allowing the rib cage in front to be soft and heavy. Now let's make that return path again inward, but super slow. Just a few inches and hold. A few inches and hold. Slide in a little bit more. And again, pull together a little bit. And more. A few more inches. Sliding in again. Getting closer now, more like a V. An even narrowing V. Good. Then we're going to bring the legs so that they're about parallel, like the number 11. And this is where I'm going to give you a choice to elevate the hips. Block might be too much, but you can try it. If you don't want to use your block, you could fold up your blanket. And then again, you can inch a little closer so that you've still got contact between that wall and the flesh on your bum, or even the bones on your bum, as your legs raise up vertical. If you want the lasso, you can slip that over the legs so they don't feel like they're going to fall apart. Give that block or that blanket all of your weight. Let your legs rest into the wall. And just do your best to be here right now in this very breath, in this body. Even in this mind, as it still continues to create thought patterns. Observe them. And then just let them pass on by. I'm going to rebend the knees. Let the heels glide down a little bit. Just enough that you could get your hips up. If you've got a support underneath you, slide it off to the side. And then we're going to remove ourselves from this wall. What I like to do to get out of this is just to tip to one side, even though I'm really close to the wall. And then use my arms for support. And then we're going to find our Shavasana. So you might want to put your feet against the wall for your Shavasana, or just organize your body in its traditional resting place for these last about 5 minutes of class. If you wanted to use your blanket somehow underneath your shoulder blades or underneath your head, or underneath your hips or legs, do that now. Make it cozy, make it comfy. And then take rest. Follow the breath in and out consciously, and then just set it free. And keep your body at rest for now. Be aware of the sensation of your breath flowing, allowing the belly to canopy, the side ribs to stretch, and receiving that breath into the posterior side as well. Consciously resting the area around your pelvis, your spine, your soft and heavy shoulders. Continuing to bring ease into the neck and the jaw. Eyes resting. And then you can start to mobilize any part of you that feels ready. I like to start with the little parts first, the fingers and toes, the wrists and the ankles. But you find your own way. Maybe turning your head, you could rebend your knees. Let your legs do the wipers again. Allow your spine to move. And then maybe you want to spend a little time either in a side lying position, cradling your head with your bottom arm, or curling up into a little ball. I really didn't do much for spinal flexion tonight, so that might feel kind of good. Squeezing your thighs into your belly and then trying to press up into your legs with your upper body. Little rocking. And then if you'd like to meet me in a seat, we'll just close practice with a few moments of noticing the state of things. You can sit on your block or your blanket and adjust your pelvis so that you have a nice natural stance in the upper body so you're not feeling forced or rigid in any way. I'd like to thank you for showing up for yourself tonight, for sharing this practice with me, and for trusting me to guide you. I hope you have an awesome evening and the rest of your week. Namaste.